Welcome to Autistic People Talking, a podcast where autistic people talk. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Claire, and this is my channel, Woodshed Theory. Here, I make content about what it is like to live as an adult on the autism spectrum and whatever else feels good to me. So if that sounds good to you, or if you're feeling particularly gracious today, and I hope that you are, please go ahead and click the subscribe button, ring the bell. I almost forgot to mention that sometimes I put out more than one video a week, so click the like and the share. Help out your good friend Claire. Welcome, 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 everyone, to one of my favorite things, and that is the podcast Autistic People Talking, a podcast where autistic people talk. Today, we have a very special guest. It's Paul from the YouTube channel, Adult with Autism.
You all right?
Welcome, 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 Paul. Thanks for coming on the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you are involved with the autism community?
Well, I'm not overly involved with the autistic community, which is why I started a YouTube channel in the first place. So I was diagnosed when I was 34. Absolutely wasn't expecting a diagnosis. So I was just having a bit of a rough time with somebody who I worked for at the time, and he just wasn't. You just couldn't talk to the guy. He was a bit. He was silly, and he was just pushing all the wrong buttons. Got me to the doctors, and they were the ones who initially started the process to send me down that path. And the next thing I knew, I came away with this diagnosis of autism, and went to autistic communities to go, "You all right? You know, what is it? What's going on?" And just my selection of words had me kicked out the door quite fast. So yeah, came over to YouTube to find people who were similar to watch from a distance. Didn't find too many people similar to me, so in the end, I just thought, forget it. I'll start my own, and I'll figure it out as I go along.
Well, it seems like it's been going really well. I was looking at your channel just to see where things were, because we actually started our YouTube channels. You started a little bit after me, I think, but
Right.
at similar time, I think within a year of each other. And looks like you're up over 14K now, right?
Oh no, I'm not up there yet. I think
13? You're up over 13.
it's about 13 or 12. I can have a quick look
I
while
know
I'm trying to tell
it's
you.
weird to talk about numbers. That wasn't the
Very.
point of this. All that to say, things are going pretty well. It seems like
Yeah, because I
maybe
thought I
you
was going to be
didn't
talking.
find your people, but your people found you.
Yeah, I thought I would be talking to myself when I made videos. I thought maybe in 5 years' time I could revisit, see what I've learned from then. Did it all line up? Did it make sense? And then people started to watch, which I've been grateful for. And even if I had 50 subscribers, it still doesn't make sense that people watch me waffle my nonsense. It just doesn't line up.
Yeah, I have talked about this with other guests, but I don't know if you feel the same way. I just kind of have to dissociate from the idea that people are watching me. Otherwise, I get too caught up in my own brain.
Yeah, I've tried to have a couple of chats online with a couple of people from doing the channel. And what's really strange is when I'm talking, people listen to me. That doesn't happen in real life. I start to speak in real life, and people are like, "Shut up, you! What's for dinner?" You know, people just push you to the side, and you're like, "Oh, I was talking then." So it's really strange that I can finish a sentence without having to rush when I'm talking online, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. You were saying that you had zero idea about being on the spectrum, and it maybe came as a surprise, which I can completely relate with because I also had no idea when the information was accidentally bestowed on me. Can you talk a little bit about that experience of going into the doctor and it it kind of slowly progressing into
Yeah.
surprise it's autism.
Yeah, it was strange because I didn't have what everybody else seems to have, which was time. Because I was in this odd situation with my boss where my job depended on it.
Mm,
He was asking me to do things that I just can't do. He wanted me to do things like cold call, just phone people out the blue. I can't do stuff like that. And that was not the job I was doing. It couldn't have been further from the job I was doing. So I had this time sensitive thing where I needed to know what was up. Why couldn't I connect with my boss? Why couldn't he hear the words that were coming out of my mouth, even though they were the truth? Why couldn't he hear me? And that was sending me crazy. And that's what took me
mm-hmm.
to the doctors. And
Yeah.
the first doctor, she just said, it can't be anything such as autism or anything like that because you're too old. It'd have been caught by now. It's not that. It's just stress. And I was like, no, I'm stressed as well.
Mm,
Don't pretend I'm not. I know I'm stressed. And I didn't like the way she was. This doctor, I've spoke about her before on my channel, but I went and saw another doctor, and I was just trying to explain how my head felt, and she listened. And then she started asking me questions, and it was like she was the first person to talk to me in my language because
mm,
the questions she was asking made sense. They had a logic to them. They progressed. They weren't just an associated question that would try and bolt something on. It followed the same train to keep trying to dig, and it was going well. And she said, I might be wrong. It's not my area, but I've got two autistic children. You
mm, mhm.
sound like you've got autism. So, I can put you on the waiting list. And the long side of that shortened, the waiting list would have been up to 2 years on the NHS. And I was time sensitive on it. So I asked
Yeah.
about the cost of private. And I said, right, well, I'm going to have to do it because I need to see someone. Even if it was to say, no, it's not autism, it's something else. And I had a cancellation that week, went and saw somebody, spent the day with them, and came away with a lighter wallet and this diagnosis of autism. And up until that day, I knew nothing about it and I had to figure it all out. So it's been a bit of a minefield.
Did they when this isn't where I was thinking the conversation would go, but like when you got the diagnosis and you're kind of you like leave the office and then you're just standing there, did they give you any like point you in any direction or like, you
Nothing,
know,
nothing.
now here's the
All,
next
all he did,
steps?
all he said was, and bear in mind, I'd spent the day with him. I'd filled in all his paperwork before. He was asking all sort of test related questions and then doing memory recall questions, things which I thought was really silly. It was, why are you testing me? Just talk to me. Let's
Right.
find the difference. You're not going to find it by me not remembering to recall a certain number. You've got to talk to somebody to know. You've got to learn the person. So he was getting on my nerves, to be honest. But what happened was when I told him I don't do things with other people, I'm very solitary. I like that. I'm not someone who participates in groups. And then
Mhm.
there was this really awkward moment where we'd gone through everything and it was like, right, now you need to pay. So I'm stood with this guy in this admin office waiting for this card machine to work. And I was just trying to make the small talk. And I said, so what do I do now? Now you've told me this autism thing. And he said, well, we've got a course like for people who are newly diagnosed later in life. And it's like £120 a session, probably like $150 a session. And it's like up to a group of 12. I'm like, I've just told you I don't do groups. So that was all he offered.
Yeah.
So I remember sort of, I got the train so far, and then I think I walked 5 miles home and just was trying to think, like, what is it? Because so for some people, I suppose they get told they're autistic and it's a revelation for them. Things drop into place. It makes sense for them. But that's because they already have a pre understanding of what autism is. I had nothing apart from Rain Man. I had nothing
Yeah.
at all. So I was told it was this certain thing, which is classed as a disability with nowhere to go with it.
That's frustrating. I wasn't even offered a course. I was just told like, well, I I think why it's crazy for me to hear that is every time every person I've talked to who's gone through a similar experience, our questions like have always been like, well, what do I do now,
Yeah.
doctor? Like, is there like what I have this information now what do I do? And the response is usually rarely adequate. Mine was, well, keep going to your OCD group and keep working on that, because that's so entrenched into me as a person. So it would be therapeutic for me. But I like who to talk to, like, or if you're not like some reading or what is there something out there for autistic
Mm.
people who are adults? And the answer, I think that the resources are growing, but it's more of a grassroots thing and not necessarily being led by the medical field. Like,
Mm. Well, there's a lot of information out there, but so much of it is wrong.
exactly,
Because,
that's hard too.
yeah, you've got the autism landscape is governed by non-autistic people, so it doesn't help. I mean, there was something recently in work where they're trying to play the fun, happy, shiny, friendly, and all inclusive of all things, and that is great, no problem. But the information that was given about autism made it sound less than. It made it sound,
Mm,
and this is one of the comments I get often on my channel is saying, you need to cheer up, mate. Autism isn't that bad. And it's like, I'm not saying it is. I adore my autism. I'm so glad I'm autistic. Now I've learned about it and have leaned into it. It's just there are bad times too,
yeah.
and all of these resources, they just focus on telling you how much it's a restrictive condition and how negative it sounds and how less than you are. And a lot of it is based around difference. So
Yeah.
if I don't enjoy certain types of communication or the frequency of communication with somebody else, but sort of on the level that non-autistic people enjoy, their frequency is much more common than mine would be. Because I
Mm,
prefer to do it less, then there's something abnormal with me. It's
yeah.
like it's just a difference. Why does it become wrong because an autistic person prefers to do socializing less potentially? So there's so much out there that's so wrong. And so in a way, it was a good thing that I couldn't find where to start
Hmm.
because I would have gone down routes believing all of the misinformation, trying to make things fit. When the reality was, because I stayed away from it all and tried to just do more of a deep dive on me, a lot of those things didn't fit. And I realized that if you look at it to see what it's trying to say, the thing that was missing is the autistic person's perspective to clear it up. And that's why there
Mm.
needs to be more representation of people getting involved with this literature. Even autistic websites are not overly generous about how they feel about autism, and it's not right.
Wow, I have so many thoughts. You said so many good things in such a short amount of time. First of all, how your channel is and your personality is one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you because I feel that you actually represent a large and unspoken for demographic within the autistic community that doesn't necessarily have a strong voice. And I really appreciate that about your work. And was one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you. So please keep it up. I think that there is a group of more introverted, autistic people who like spending their time alone and are trying to navigate the world. And it's difficult to for them maybe for people from that community to be on the internet and be talking about it, right? Maybe that's not something that would come naturally to some people. So I think what you do is really cool and really brave. I think it's so great that there are people who are outside of the autism community who want to be advocates and raise the issue of advocacy for autistic people. But I hope that as advocacy grows, they realize that they have to raise autistic voices as well. Because I think you're 100% right in that most of the information out there or the here's how autistic people are is coming from people who are not on the autism spectrum. It's like you're getting like a facsimile. Is that a word people use anymore? You're getting a like you're seeing the copy of a painting and not the real painting.
Mm.
And it's like you can still appreciate it, but it's you're not going to really see the beauty in it or really see all the detail.
It needs to be a conversation that's unfiltered. They need to
Yeah.
remove, because they can only, the thing what I keep trying to explain to people, anyone who listen, is autism is so much of it is mental. Our thought processes that we don't share, the
Yeah.
1,001 conversations and arguments that we can have with I would say a shampoo bottle in the shower, but not for me. But the way we process, the way we get from A to B, we take so many routes. Even just to go and get bread and milk from the local shop, it's not a case of I'm just going to stick a pair of shoes on and off I go. It's knowing the route, it's knowing the time of day, the weather, the brightness, how busy is that shop going to be? Do I already know the layout? Where is the bread? Where is the milk? Do they do self-service so I can just get in and get out? Will there be people around who I potentially know because I'm not in the mood today? We run, but they're just a few things we might run out of 800 things, and we'll run that in a millisecond.
Yeah.
Now, nobody can see that. So, autism, when you're not autistic and you're trying to learn autism, it's great to talk to self aware autistic adults. That's brilliant. But there'll always be a part they will never get to learn about because it's near impossible to try and verbalize. And everything researchers and professionals will only ever see is what they can see. They can watch neurons on a monitor, they can watch the observations of an autistic person, but until they involve us, they will never get to appreciate our thought process. And if
Mm,
you don't want to learn our thought process, you are missing probably over 80% of what autism really is.
yeah. So many, there's so many things, good points. One question that struck me, which I think is funny now looking back at myself, before your diagnosis, did you think you were a good communicator? Because I thought I was a good communicator.
Yes and no. So I could make people laugh. I could always make people laugh, but I could never get people to take me seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obviously because of masking and being someone for everyone. And when you mask, or when I mask, not you, when I mask, I want to be to cheer people up.
Yeah.
I was rarely seen when I masked as the serious or the sensible one that you could have a heart to heart with, or if there was a serious moment you would come to, it was Paul's all right is good for a laugh. And that's because I
Mm,
wanted people to be happy because they were distracted with humor. So I stayed hidden. And I was doing that before I knew about masking, before I knew about autism. But I thought I was good at communicating because I could make them laugh,
right.
but not for when I needed them to listen. So, in other words, when it became about me, no. When it was about everybody else, yes.
Yeah, I didn't think I just always thought that obviously I didn't realize that I had a different thought process than other people. So I held my thought process, even though I didn't know it was different. I held my way of thinking in higher regard than other people's because I felt like why isn't everyone thinking it through the way I'm thinking it through and that it must be that uh, others are deficient in communicating. I didn't realize that we were just communicating differently.
Mm.
And there are things about being diagnosed with autism where I look at how I was treated by other people and I think, well, that was pretty crappy of you.
Yeah.
Uh, but there are other things where I need to take a good look at myself in the mirror and realize that my behavior in context, not great.
Yeah. And there's something there which I always think about, which is very similar on them lines. And that is, because some people have treated me terribly. I haven't treated anybody like they treated me. But there were times where I killed the room, or I was the problem for where there should not have been a problem. It's just Paul's being Paul. But
Mm,
what I've learned was I was always specific about everything, whereas everybody who was around is more general. Like the unimportant things, they are very general in thought. They don't need so much attention to them. Whereas I would give everything 100% attention, no matter whether it was a huge thing or whether it was tiny. Like, as an example, I've got a friend who, ever since we were kids, we've done movie quotes to each other. And he could reel off 5 minutes of a movie, doing the impressions, whatever. And he might have got one word wrong. And at the end, I used to correct it instead of laughing. And it was like, why was I like that? The universe isn't going to explode if he gets one word wrong. I need to relax because I was being stressed. I was being bothered at the world around me and everybody just having quite a lackadaisical attitude. And I'm thinking, well, why? If you can get it right first time, get it right every time. All it takes is thought. But when I looked, it was just me who was stressed. It was just me who was bothered. So I had to drop that. I had to learn to be more like other people. And the world isn't going to implode if I just relax
I
with
think
movie
that's one of
quotes.
those, yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things where it's an example of how does a diagnosis change you and why is it important?
Mm-hmm.
How how would we know that about ourselves? Like that the need for correctness and understanding that there are things that are okay to let go that actually don't change anything. And you wouldn't know that about yourself had you not known about being on the autism spectrum. We talk about it all the time here. When people say, like, well, what's the point? You were doing fine. It's just another thing where it's like, wasn't fine. Um, and I was actually just thinking about, one of your most popular videos is kind of a similar topic to one of my most popular videos, which is tells me that it's something that a lot of people struggle with. And that is, I think mine is, the trauma around late diagnosis. And I think yours is the dark side. And you were talking before about how, people always want to focus on the positive, and then when you kind of talk about the negative, they don't really want to talk. They don't want to talk about that, or they consider that to be like a taboo. Like, oh, but it's so wonderful, and it's like, actually, no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or sorry, what I'm trying to say is, yeah, it is wonderful to be on the autism spectrum. I once asked my community if they would, if you could take a pill, would you take it away? Some people said yes.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of people said no, which is, to each their own. It is so one of the hardest things about processing the diagnosis is almost a toxic positivity that you're met with,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
I think is meant to make other people feel comfortable, maybe.
I mean, if we started getting into this, we'd be here till next Tuesday. But there is a massive discrepancy across autistic people and whether they would be autistic or not if they could take a pill and take it away. And for some people, if it impacts their life and there's absolutely nothing more they can do, I can kind of understand the reasoning. But if it's about managing yourself, then to
Mm-hmm.
take it back to what you said, that's where it's important to have the diagnosis of autism Because whereas before, if I was being a stickler for something, or I was too focused on something, or it was just me who was affected by something, then that was just me being very different to everyone else. Now I know why. So
Mm.
that matters to me, which if I then have a name or a reason and I understand me, because to me, autism is like a sleeping beast inside me. A weird, strange way of putting it. But for example, I get emails of younger people quite often, like 18, 19, 20, 21. And a very similar question is I really want to go clubbing, but I'm
Mm.
worried because I'm autistic and I've already bought these glasses which will help with the strobe lights. What ear defenders would you recommend? I'm worried, that the smells are going to be overwhelming. People are going to bang into me. They're going to be too close. I don't like that. Have you got any recommendations about how I can make it easier? And I just say, yeah, don't go. It's, and it's because they're young, and I appreciate that. You want to do what everybody else is doing, but do you really want to do what everybody else is doing? Yes, you might lose certain friends because that's what they want to do. That's what happened to me. I went once or twice and thought, this is rubbish. It's
Yeah.
noisy. What? I don't get it. But when you say don't go, you've got to listen to yourself. You're telling yourself all the answers. You don't like the lights. You don't like the volume of the music. You don't like the smells. You don't like people too close to you. You're worried at the end of the night how you're going to get home. Listen to that.
Mm.
And maybe find reasoning with friends where you can't do that because it's going against everything that you feel. But would your friends maybe meet you halfway? Like, would you go to a bar, for example, where you do have somewhere to sit, where you can maybe have a chat and talk to your friends and catch up. And then if they so want at the end, after that, they can all go on to the club. No
Yeah.
worries. You don't have to do it because what do you think you're going to get out of it when you're already telling me all the things that you're worried about? You need to listen to yourself.
Especially because I mean, I've been to the club. I'm of a certain age now where that's not even on my mind. Only several times in my life, several times in the UK actually. Yeah, I'd say it's one of those things where after a few times it's like I don't think I don't need to revisit. Is that
No,
really fun to me? Like
exactly. I've done it. Now what? Like,
that
what does
doesn't feel
everybody
like
else get out of it? I don't know what there is to get. Like, the music is too loud and it's usually rubbish, not my type of music anyway. The drinks are really expensive and watered down. People are fighting because they can't handle the drink. People are throwing out shapes on a dance floor and they can't dance, and then these drunk people copying off with each other. And it's like,
not really
I
my
don't,
speed.
yeah, it's like, I don't know why I want to do this Friday and Saturday every weekend for the next 5 years, like some of my mates did.
But I think it's this idea also of so badly wanting to be included. It can be very lonely to have different sensory needs than other people. I've found, I don't know if you feel this way, just because I also like to do things alone most of the time. I need so much time, like recoup time from any
Mm.
social interaction. Usually after I film the podcast, the rest of the day is for me. Like I need some time. And I love filming the podcast. Like this is like the highlight. So it can be just because you want or need a lot of time alone doesn't mean you never want to spend time with other people. Not being able to do it in a neurotypical way where you can do it successfully is frustrating.
Mm. It is. And I'm like you, I need the recharge time. The more I do, the more recharge time I do need. And that's even with planning everything around it, making
Mm,
sure that, like I say, if I do something, it's got to be halfway. I'm not going to do something that's deeply unpleasant just to please other people.
mm,
I know it sounds horrible to family, for example, but I don't do family events anymore. And it's because I'm just a background person anyway, making up the numbers, just walk past them. Hiya, how are you getting on? Yeah, not so bad. How are you? Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. Great. Now I've got to
sit
do
in the
that
corner, eat your plate of food, wait
and
for
just wait
the
to go.
appropriate amount of
Yep.
time.
Yep. And then it's like, oh, I've got to get off. I've got an early start tomorrow. Yeah, and it's like I don't go anymore because I don't get nothing from it. Nobody misses me if I'm not there anyway. So let's just accept that it's nothing negative. I just don't want to come. And
Yeah.
you have a great time without me. I want you to have a nice time. I don't want to show up and be awkward about it all because I'd rather be at home in pajamas playing with the dog.
I think that that idea, though, of figuring out how to best make an autism diagnosis work for you and work within having autism, I think that's pretty much everyone's main goal.
Mm.
I know that that has really changed my life, and figuring out how to make it work for me in all areas of life is something that I would do it all again just for that. I think that makes it worth it. How do you feel that you've kind of coped with that? Like, how has it changed your life in a positive way to get the autism diagnosis?
Well, you've got to be willing to get yourself wrong
Mm,
along that route because, again, we are quite perfectionists. And the idea of failing stops us trying. I
yeah.
found that across quite a few autistic people when I'm trying to be nice and I'm trying to offer my advice. Some people won't try because of the fear of failing. But if you
Mm,
don't fail, you don't know what you need to correct. You know, like to
yeah.
use a silly computer game analogy, if I was to be on a city builder game, I'll get so far through it and then I start a brand new game because I've seen something which would be better the next time.
Mm,
So I will just restart, start again. But you've got to be willing to do that in your life as well. If you've got to be able to fail, you've got to see where it goes wrong to know where it needs to go right. You're not going to get yourself right 100% of the time because we age every day. We've got a an age, world that grows alongside us with every single person who would come into our contact. They are changing too. So you have to understand that you will slip up. There will be a mistake made. There's
mm,
absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. Everything is live around us. But the important part is to not fail and beat yourself up. It's to go, all right,
right.
well, I tried that. It didn't quite work for me. Like you might be going out much more frequently than you feel you can deal with. Like you talk about recharge, you might find that you're not fully recharged, or you might be at the end, you might be burnt out almost, and then you're still trying to people please and tick all the boxes. To pick on another type of email is people who are married with children and they've had a late diagnosis, and they will ask the question, how do I now say I need space? How do I now say I need alone time? Because that's never been the case in the last 18 years.
Mm, mhm.
Which is my point. You change, your surroundings change, people change, nothing stays stagnant. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with ripping what seems like a plaster off to ask for your accommodations, to try something new. I just wish more people would try because it's getting over the fact that failing don't feel great,
No.
but winning, settling into something, finding your pattern. Like I don't care where I've been, I don't care what I'm doing. I still adore the feeling of coming home, getting the pajamas on, playing with the dog, locking that front door. This is my postage stamp space on earth that is mine. It's my favorite place. I love it. Now, I don't go out. I don't want to go out. I don't want to do the events. I don't want to talk to 1,000 people. I don't want to be, spotlight. It took me a long time to feel like I wasn't missing out or I wasn't letting somebody down. And I
Yeah.
had to go, just accept this. You're allowed this. Try it. And if you still feel rubbish in a month or 2 months, then maybe go back out again. But I didn't because I'd given myself that allowance to adjust again to say instead of feeling bad that I'm letting everybody down, just look after you and do what you want for once without feeling bad.
I
And
hope that
just
a diagnosis gives people that permission. I know
yeah,
that it did for me.
right.
Not I'm not perfect. It hasn't been all the way. I'm sure you do as well, like struggle with perfectionism or finding yourself like holding yourself to an expectation that has no reason. It's like, why? I just hope that people, and maybe through the work that we do, give themselves permission to figure out what makes them feel comfortable and what a comfortable, not that being uncomfortable is bad all the time, but um, what does a fulfilling life look like
Mm.
to you personally?
Yeah, and it needs to matter to you.
Yeah.
If you're not hurting anyone, and you're getting something from it, it doesn't offend, it doesn't upset, there isn't harm being done by it, you owe it to yourself to look into it, because that is one of the problems. You will do what you want to do. And if it comes around a Monday and I might be in work and I'll talk to someone, they'll always say, "What did you do on the weekend?" I go, "Nothing at all." And they go, "That sounds
Mm.
boring." It's like, yeah, to you. I'm not judging you. I don't hear you saying, "Oh, I went out and I did this. I went to a party." Oh, that's terrible,
Terrible.
terrible. But people want to tell you that you're doing it wrong. You're wasting your life. Well, to you, that's why it's my life and not yours. I'm doing what I want. You do
I
what
think
you want.
there's like I kind of went through a bit of a mourning process too, though, where it's like letting go of what I thought I needed to be
Mm,
to what I thought success was to actually be successful for myself. Um, Letting go, and I know a lot of that has is internalized ableism, I think is the term for it. Like feeling like, oh, this is what it means to be successful for all people. And this is what I need to do to get there, no matter how it makes me feel. Like this is the standard, I need to be there. I've really struggled personally with letting go of some of those expectations. I still struggle
right.
because I think I get down on myself where it's like I need more time. I can't go that quickly or I will get burnt out. But then I'm thinking, well, if it really mattered to me, wouldn't I be killing myself? I think most autistic people I've talked to are late diagnosed. They didn't realize that like it's not like this idea of like killing yourself to like do sacrificing everything and pushing forward. Not everyone is living to that standard. I thought that everyone was living to that standard and maybe I just sucked at it. I didn't.
No, I totally get that. And one of the things that happened to me when I was diagnosed, I was angry with it. I was angry with this diagnosis
Yeah.
because how can I go all these years to then be told I'm something that I had no idea I was? Because then I had to pick me to pieces and try and find how it all made sense.
You didn't just do it because you thought it was cool.
Certainly not. No, I've never been one to be cool, I've got to admit. But it was never, I just had to unpick myself to learn what this autism was. And I always found people, I always found with me, because it was a disability, because it was viewed so poorly on the internet, because some people with autism also have learning impairments, that affect them severely. I tried 10 times as hard in work. I would push so much further and do so much more. And I was the one who volunteered for the weekends. I was the first person to put his hands up and say, I'll do that project, because I wanted people to still just see me as the
Mm.
as the worker, as the person, the one who grafted, the one who put the time, energy, and effort in. I didn't want them to see me as autistic first if I ever needed something like an accommodation making him work. And then thankfully, the thing that changed with that is I grew to appreciate autism. So now I see it as something that I'm fortunate to have. Whereas when I was diagnosed with it, I wasn't fortunate to have it because I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was a disability. And for the first 34 years of my life, I wasn't classed as disabled. So
Mm.
it was that word that was really, I had a lot of struggle with that until I stopped caring about it. and just realized that I'm autistic. It works for me. I know how to channel my autism for the right reasons. I managed to drop imposter syndrome because I was never better than any single human being in that room. They all knew more than me at work. Their words were more trustworthy than mine. And in the end, I'd had enough of being treated like a fool, being used, stepped on, breaking my soul for other people who didn't really care. And in the end, I thought, forget it. I'm going to be as good as I am. And if that's not good enough for people, all right, it'll be good enough for someone. And strangely enough, when I put all my energy and effort into being the best version of me when it came to work, I did well. It was just I was too hung up by things that, you know, as I sit here today, I don't care about. So it proves that there isn't any weight in some of your thoughts that bog you down and
Yeah.
make you belittle yourself in a way.
I wish there was a way. I wish maybe somebody had told me and that I could tell other people that, especially if you're going through a late autism diagnosis, there's just a complete, I mean, of course, should I say, I'm not talking for all autistic people, but I say in general, my experience from people have been there's like a complete breaking down of who you were and the rebuilding process. It doesn't just happen overnight. It really takes years. And I felt that I knew that there needed to be a change. I don't know that I knew that it was going to take this long or that I'd still be going through it years later. And I am in a much better place than I was when I first got diagnosed and I was going through all the stages of grief. I just want people to know that these feelings that they're feeling, that they might be feeling, anger, confusion, those are expected and totally okay to be feeling, and that you won't always feel that way.
Yeah.
It is so, what I'm thinking of good vocabulary words, oddling. It's so disorienting to find out something that is so out there about yourself, especially when it's like I I think most of us would say, I know I was different. Definitely different. And like I don't know if people would describe me, they'd be like, Claire, so Claire. Especially when you like come to the table like you were saying with like these are the ideas I thought about autism. This is what I thought it meant. And to be told like, oh no, that's what you thought was completely wrong and you're autistic and you know, good luck figuring out what that means. Whew, it both sets you back and moves you forward at the same time. And it's a
Mm.
really difficult transition to go through.
It's a horrible place when you are first diagnosed. It would be very. I mean, it wasn't that too much of a different world when I was diagnosed, but I can see how difficult it can be now knowing what I know. I was diagnosed. I didn't ask for it. I didn't look for it, but I can explain until I run out of oxygen every single one of the things I do, which will line up perfectly with falling into autism. Uh, you know, sectors and
Mm.
sections. And it's more than just being introverted. It's more than just being logical. There's so much to it. Every single thing I do is steeped in it, and I'm glad it is because it took a long time to. Well, it took from 34 till now to for it to sort of really settle in. I'm kind of in. You talked about stages of grief before. I'm kind of in this stage now where not I don't feel like I've won the lottery, but I feel great because
Yeah.
everything I'm doing in work at the minute, and this won't last. I'll touch wood, hope it stays, carrying on for a bit longer. But I've been leading with my autism on quite a few projects. I've been letting the autism do the function. I've been letting the autism, create the plan. And I've been going above and beyond with certain planning. So everything, if I have to go somewhere, it's all figured out. So by the time I get there, all I've got to do is do it. And that wasn't always happening because somebody
Yeah.
else would have the plan. So now I'm going, I'll have the plan if you don't mind. And they're like, yeah, of course, you put it together. So I've been really putting autism right at the forefront and using the strength for the sort of hyper focus I've got for logistics and for process and for knowing my sector inside and out. And I'm putting all of it together. And thankfully, for the meantime, it's going well, like better than work has ever gone.
When I think too, yeah, when you give yourself the opportunity and the permission to work within autism and to really dial in like what works best for you, I think that the output from that speaks for itself. It is so good. Hopefully in the future, employers will see the value in that, why it's a benefit and good for companies to work with autistic people like that. Like you want to see something go successfully, let an autistic person just do their thing in the
Yeah,
way that works for them. It might not come in a package dressed up the way that you anticipated, but you're still getting everything that you wanted.
yeah. And the best way to always put it, especially with employers, is we always make the accommodations for every single person around us so they can feel like they don't have to change for us. They don't have to think for us. They don't have to make sure we're okay. We mask and do everything for everyone. And we always have done and don't actually ask for anything in return. But the second we do in the UK, we needed to pass legislation to make
Mm,
employers listen. So we
yeah,
don't get it back as easy as we give it. And we're never asking for anything difficult. I've got, I think now, 12 accommodations in work, but every single one of them affects nobody at all. But they help me.
yeah. I mean, and that's what we advocate for here, and I've talked to other people about is many of the accommodations that we ask for. They're not big things, but they make a big difference to us.
Yeah.
Where we sit in the office, what we have to listen to, are there people around? Can we have our own private space? Like things where it's like a very small thing makes such a big difference.
I've purposefully done everything I've done, but I didn't realize I was doing it because of autism.
Yeah.
So jobs I've stepped away from were all customer facing roles. And I never realized why I struggled so much with conflict. And I remember like working security, and the arguments people would have with you blew my mind. It's like, why are we even having this conversation? But it always, regardless of how it ended up, I hated anything where I needed to be polite to someone who wasn't being polite to me.
Yes, yeah.
And I think there's actually a term for it, and I always pronounce it wrong, but it's like the Gaucher reaction.
I'm not
And
familiar.
it's basically if I start talking to you aggressively, you will naturally talk to me aggressively
Mm-hmm.
because you just match however
Mirroring.
whatever's
Hmm.
yeah. And that's exactly what I do. And I never realized. I never thought it was a term. I just thought, well, I'm being spoken to like an idiot. I'll speak to you like an idiot
Mm,
because who are you talking to? But it was horrible every time. It would still set the butterflies off in my stomach. I'd feel horrible for it. I'd be on edge. I'd be anxious. I'd be stressed. And I just always knew that working with people where I was a service to them, that had a finite time pin to that. I was never going to be able to do that all my life. And then I slowly sort of transitioned into something else where now I'm more of I'm still that support service, but it's for people in work. So it's people
right.
who already work for my company and then they deal with the people.
Yeah.
I can do
That
that because we can disagree. We're allowed, we're allowed to keep bottoming it out until we find a solution. It's not precious anymore. It's not if they say, oh, he's hard to deal with and they make up whatever they want, that I instantly get scolded for it because it was always that unfairness that I didn't like.
well, yeah, an autistic person in a service role really struggles with the idea that the customer is always right when that doesn't work for us, right? Because it's like, no, you're not right.
Mm.
And that's apparent here. And I don't understand why everyone is asking me to ignore the fact that this person's not right.
Yeah, it's very, very tough. It's even happened when I worked on bars when I was a lot younger, and money went missing from a till.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, this isn't me. I would never steal. It's not me. I haven't done it. But I felt the most guilty person in the room because the guilty person wasn't bothered. Otherwise, they would have never
Right.
stolen in the first place. And it was kind of like I wanted to almost lead the way to say we need to find this person sooner than later because one, they shouldn't be stealing. Two, I feel like I'm also being accused because you don't know who it
Yeah.
is. And I
I
just
can't
needed to get
sit
away
with the
from that.
unsettling feeling.
No, that's it. And you don't know how long it's going to last. And the boss would be saying, "Well, we've got to put some plans in place. Can't tell you what they are, obviously." And you'd be like, "Well, can I be off unpaid until you catch this person? Because I can't be in." No, no, we need you to work. It's like, yeah, but someone's stealing money and you don't know who it is. Therefore, you think it could also be me. And it isn't me. And I need to do anything I can to get out of this situation, to get away from it. And it's all because of that unsettling feeling. It's horrible.
I think if you are not autistic, it might be very hard to understand the extent to which an autistic person cannot let it go
Hmm.
and how difficult, like this, oh, just let it go. Or this idea of like, oh, when you go home, relax, take the, put work down and recoup. Like I couldn't let things go, was so wrapped up, and it was just constant anxiety. And now my life revolves around taking a step back, reflecting on how I'm feeling. Is this causing me an issue with my nervous system? And what do I need to do to make sure that that doesn't happen? Like I had no idea like I have OCD, and like I just had no idea that people didn't just feel anxious all the time.
Hmm.
Like I just ran on an 11 of anxiety, and that's is don't doesn't everyone feel that fight or flight? Doesn't everyone feel that way all the time? One of the ways that like expressed itself is like I felt like I cared about things so much more than other people.
Yeah.
Like why doesn't everyone take it as seriously? And I get upset with other people, not realizing that I needed to chill out. But I couldn't have known like I could not have it I couldn't have acknowledged that, and I could not have fixed it had I not gotten an autism diagnosis.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly the way I feel. And I remember the boss who I ended up going down the route of trying to find out what was wrong. He said a couple of things which will stay with me forever. And it ties it in where he said, the problem is you care this much. You care so much about what you do. So the problem you've got to always keep in mind is you will only ever work for people who care this much. They'll
Mm,
care half of what you do. So just know that all of that, the rest of what you care will be wasted because you'll never achieve more than what the boss you work for actually wants.
yeah.
And it was like, but why don't they care as much as I do? It's their company. Why wouldn't they want to do the best? Why wouldn't they want to fix everything? Why wouldn't they want to improve process? Why wouldn't they? And I could never get why people were just content with half finished work and be more interested in workplace politics. It's like, I don't want to even care about workplace politics. I just want to do the best job I can with the least amount of fuss, minimal effort, still keep it as accurate as possible, go home, pajamas, dog.
The world really changes as an autistic person when you realize that, and again, I'm not speaking for everyone. I always feel like I have to say that, but when you
So do I.
realize when you realize that your standard is so high that you can actually care a lot less, do a little bit less, people will still think that your output is higher than the others, and you'll be less stressed. I mean, that's amazing to realize that. Obviously, you want to do your, get your work done or whatever at work, but the idea that the standard is your personal standard is so high, and you're killing yourself to get to that
Mm.
standard. But you could actually knock that a few pegs back, and people would still be like, "Oh, good work."
Yeah, they would, and it takes it to that sort of thing we were saying before about being general and being specific. It doesn't have to be so dialed in up to 11, doing your best work every single day, all of the time. You can dial it back, and you've got to remember if you're getting paid the same as the worst performer and nobody's bothering them, why are you trying as hard? You can forgive yourself because it might keep some more energy in your reserve. You might have time and energy to do things after work instead of feeling burnt out and frustrated.
Sometimes you are meant to just trust what's going on behind the scenes, and trust other people's intentions. But as an autistic person who can't see the full picture and also can't read subtext, can't can't be like, "Oh, well, if somebody's not doing a good job, it's not my job to worry about it. My boss can handle that. None of my business." Really, I would struggle with that because I wanted to just be in the thick of it and understand it all at the same time. I mean, we could go on for hours about workplace stuff. It is difficult I think it's difficult. Obviously, a lot of autistic people are unemployed, and I get the reasons because
I can absolutely see the reasons. I've worked for some horrible, horrible people who were all about ego and, were just so into themselves because I'm the manager. You will respect that I'm the manager. It's like, no, no, you earn respect. Your job title doesn't give you respect. Earn
also
respect.
autistic people only we struggle with authority because we don't understand it.
No, not bothered at all. Like I said, if you want to impress me, tell me about your pajama collection. Don't tell me about what car you drive, how much money you earn, what membership to what club you've got. I don't care. That's for you to care about because that's your life. I'm not. If all I ever ask is, are you content? Are you happy? And if you say yeah, I go great. I'm happy for you. All
Well,
those
you've mentioned
other bits,
pajamas a few times now, so now I'm assuming that you have a pajama collection.
I
And
absolutely do. Yeah, I've got more house clothes than I do outside clothes.
oh yeah, I struggle with that too, where it's like now I'm at the point too, since I've really retreated from the world. If if I am invited to things, I usually have to go buy something because I don't have that. I don't have the appropriate socially acceptable piece of cloth. Like if it's not made of like a stretch material, it's probably not in my possession right now.
Absolutely. And one of the things is very important is I always do talk about pajamas or comfy clothes. And it's to always let people know what standard they should have. And that is to be content in the most your home has to be safe. It has to be your safe space. And if you can relax in your comfy clothes with the surrounding you want that you've created for yourself, or if you live with people, you've discussed with them what you need, and you can find, you're amicable with each other, you can find a comfort level, and everybody gets what they need, not what they want, what they need. It's very different. Then so be it. So pajamas are like the metaphor for that. Everything's got to be comfortable.
Yeah, I there are just so many things about diagnosed life that have changed for me. And one of them is and I've said when people ask about unmasking, like first steps, I've recently made a short about this. It's like, start asking yourself, what do I like? Do I like this when you're doing things? What works for me? What makes me feel okay. Somebody recently pointed out too the good point of like, well, sometimes you do have to make yourself uncomfortable to get to that point. And sometimes it's okay to make yourself uncomfortable if you're trying to grow or you're trying to stretch yourself as a person. That is like a to me that's like the exception, not the rule kind of thinking, where yeah, there are times where you are going to be uncomfortable. But I also would like autistic people to realize you've been making yourself uncomfortable your entire life.
Yeah.
So this idea that like, oh well, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Yeah, you've been uncomfortable. It's
Yeah.
also okay to take the step back and say, it's okay for me not, it's okay for me to ask for and do things that make me feel better and not make me have have meltdowns, however you experience meltdowns, like or shutdowns or whatever you experience. It's okay not to force yourself into that and to start saying, like you were saying, maybe I don't go to some most family gatherings just for kicks, you know? Maybe I don't go out to the club because that's how I'm invited and finding the ways that it works for you. And if they're your real friends and they're people who care about you,
Yep. Absolutely. That
they
is,
won't mind.
I've always said good people will always understand because you're not doing it just to be awkward. You're not doing it to get attention. It's usually the last thing we want, especially me. Um, it's because we need to find the balance. So, an autism diagnosis does help with balance. And people will say to me, what's the point in getting diagnosed? You know, I'm self-diagnosed. There's no point in me getting a diagnosis. I'm like, well, that's fine for you, but I would have still needed it because of imposter syndrome. I would have needed it. I need someone else to tell me. I wouldn't have trusted my word.
Me too. I feel the same exact way. I think especially after, well, as a person with OCD who like really struggled with reassurance seeking, and also not trusting myself, like, and being told growing up, you're just being dramatic or that's not reality. I was so worried that that's what it was. And I was also, this is just my experience. I was so worried about like if I brought this to other people, they would give me that same reaction of like, oh, you always think. And I really wanted the validation to carry with me. Not everybody needs that. It's just something I needed.
No, I absolutely resonate with that feeling. Um, I would I would second guess everything I would say to people, even if I knew it was right.
Yes, yeah.
That was a horrible feeling until it broke. You know, and it's one of the things which I always try and explain, but I'm either good at explaining or I'm absolutely terrible at it. There's no middle ground, and it's trying to explain to younger autistic people that if things aren't great now, it doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. You know, there
Mm,
are really, I mean, my mind will burn out from trying to remember everything I want to say, but there are ultimately three things you've got to do. You know, you've got to rid yourself of toxic people, you've got to rid yourself of toxic environments, and you've got to focus on only the things that are actually within your control. And that's your starting point. So, toxic people, it doesn't matter if it's mother, father, brother, sister, boyfriend, girlfriend, best friend. If somebody is in your life who genuinely doesn't want the best for you, then you actually don't need that person in your life because what do they bring if they don't have your genuine interests at heart? So that is something that needs to be worked on.
mm-hmm,
The same with the environments. You might be living with one of those people. You've got to get out of there.
mm,
But you might be in a workplace with a bad boss. You've got to get out of there. Now the thing is, people will say to me, "You make it sound so easy,"
it's
and I
not.
might make it sound easy, but I also didn't put a time on it. You know, it took me to get on the wrong side of 40 for things to fall into place, but they only fell into place because I put in the hard work for an easy life. But as you know, life isn't easy when you're autistic unless you are completely isolated on top of a mountain with some furry little animals to keep you company and to get your eggs from.
And a
So,
benefactor. Yeah.
and a benefactor will do, yeah. But it takes all your life to get your life right sometimes. If you haven't got benefactors, if there's nobody, if you haven't got that fast track to benefit from. So when I give the advice, I'm not saying it's something that's going to happen tomorrow, but it's something you've got to
Mm,
work towards. You need things to work towards. And like I said, it took me to get on the wrong side of 40 for it to finally feel like I can take my foot off the gas ever so slightly. But now I've got to stop accelerating and start spinning the plates. I've got to maintain what I've got. And
mm,
to really lean into my autism has only happened in the last year and a half.
yeah.
So it
And I
doesn't
think I've
happen
seen
overnight.
that journey for you, which has been cool. That's what's neat about being able to watch people who share their life online. I remember earlier videos where, and I hope it's okay to say, you were really struggling.
Oh, yeah, big time. I didn't have a clue. And I still don't have a clue. It's just now I've got a repetition of a pattern that I generally do.
Yeah.
Whereas at the beginning, it was a case of I've got things to say, but I don't know how to say them. I don't actually know how I want to say it. And
Mm,
I've got no idea what the outcome is supposed to be. I just need to talk because I'd never spoken with my autistic mind before.
yeah.
So this was the first time I was taking my thoughts that were only ever just mine and changing them into words that other people could actually hear.
Yeah.
So it's like talking autistically for the first time. And it's very difficult. You've never done it before. It's like learning to speak.
I remember when maybe it was my mother asking, like, well, what's your YouTube channel going to be about? And I just gave her this like amalgamate, like it just this answer. Now I feel like I could say like the channel is about me sharing my autistic life online, but it's also been about accepting myself,
Mm.
learning about myself, and using the channel as a platform to be able to facilitate that. But that's really, I mean, in the beginning, and as you just said, like you have no idea how to even do that and even start talking about it. So, I mean, I everyone thinks that their first videos are bad, which is why I tell people just do it because it's going to be bad. It's so funny now because like I remember being like just saying I'm autistic to a camera made it feel very real.
Mm.
But then also me being like, most people probably watch the video and they're like, okay, she's autistic. But for me, I was like, I'm dropping the bomb. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is a big deal. People are going to be like, yeah, whoa, okay. Like that, because that's how it felt. I don't know. I'm sure that that's not how people felt. And I look back, I watched the video, I'm like, okay, that's a little like it's a bit dramatic. And I feel for this person. But it's really hard to start articulating as you were saying, articulating what's going on inside and like letting that out.
Yeah. It's so tough. And trying to make sense of it because you what I found, and this is gonna sound crazy, was I would be saying something, and because of the way I talk, I always try and give an example. And I would learn listening to myself talk, saying the example for it to actually make sense. So I was telling myself and teaching myself along the way, which is
Mm,
nuts because I'm supposed to already know the point I'm saying. And there'd be plenty of times I'd press stop on the camera and go, right, I now know the better way of saying that
yeah.
because I'd learn it for the first time. But the only reason I started was because when I did first, when I was diagnosed, and I did read some literature, and I'm not very good at reading. I can read, but I can't retain. I can't hold. I can't get engrossed. I can't. Never been good at it. And I came to YouTube, and I was looking for people like me, and that's not any sort of I'm only bothered about my version of autism, but it's where I learned there were versions of autism. Not
Mm.
everybody's the same. And some people would talk just sharing experiences. But then other people were more like a TV show, and it was a lot of quick edits and a lot of quick cuts. And but I couldn't find anyone still talking like me, just where
Mm.
they're trying to figure it out or they're trying to put two and two together, put their lived experience with autism out there. And some of my videos go into depth or something very personal. And then what I still get, which makes my head drop, is when somebody just goes, I tried listening to this 5 seconds in, I had to turn it off. You're not an adult with autism, you're an autistic adult. And it's like, oh, I'm not doing this again. Because it just blows my mind that people get so hung up over the things we shouldn't be bothered about.
I
It's
used
up
to
to you.
care. At the
Did you?
beginning, I'd let it bother me. And now I'm like, bye.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, just press delete on them ones. It's because people will what people forget is opinions matter. So your opinion will matter to you. My opinion matters to me. Now, if we're not wishing hurt or harm or being disrespectful, who cares? We just get on with it. It's what everybody's always done for generations. We just need to do that. So it's still difficult every now and again. Like the last video I've put up is quite, a personal one. And I still had one of them come through. And I thought, you haven't, this is why some people will never learn. They throw their own hurdles up, which to take it to the third rule I have, you should only focus on the things you can control. You can control if that bothers you. You really can. Because you've got to see what am I doing with the way I choose to address myself. Nothing. It's just for me. I'm not asking anyone else to do anything with it. But it offends people that much, they will reach out in emails with page upon page of block capital letters slagging me off, all the names under the sun. And I just think, hurt people want to hurt people. That's all I see. You just have to remember why you're there and what you're doing,
Yeah,
and there'll
yeah.
always be, and I see it the other way around than human nature wants us to feel. There's always so much emphasis on the bad and the bad feelings and not much given to the good. Whereas if somebody leaves a positive comment or even just thanks you because, now they don't feel so alone because they thought they were the only person with that mindset, and you go out there, share your brain, and it turns out it links to somebody. That's why I started videos. It was
Yeah.
because I was alone. I was on my own. I couldn't find people who spoke like I do. So if I'm now that person who was missing on the internet when I needed them, then that's all I'm bothered about. Trolls can be in the caves and under the bridges. I'm not bothered what they do, because if someone's positive and took their time to just say thanks, then that matters so much more. It's just strange that there are those people out there who feel the need to leave a comment when they could just press anything else, do anything else.
When you start, you think you're going to be yelling into a void. Like I just did not realize that. I guess in my mind, like I knew like YouTube, build an audience, people watch your videos. But I had never built that kind of connection with watching someone where I was like commenting and building a community and like learning. So I just didn't even think that that was a possibility, that it wouldn't just be shouting out into the void. Like people would show up, resonate with what I had to say, and then want to stick around and hang out. That had never occurred to me. I thought it was going to be just hate comments, I guess. Like I just didn't think, the idea like people want to talk to you and they care about what you say and, hey, I'm just like you and it really makes me feel not alone. Like that was a big revelation to me.
It's a crazy feeling in a way, because like I'll sit here now and I thought I was the only one who felt the way I do. And from people leaving the comments, it's made me realize that it doesn't matter where these people are, they exist. And
Mm,
it's not just me who thinks that way. It's not just me who has troubles with this. It's not just me who has concerns over a certain thing that everybody else seems to think is really trivial. That is, it's done. I wanted to be somebody for others, and
mm,
it turns out it was everybody else. It was someone for me, and all I've got to do is make a video and they speak and I feel heard. And it's nice to not feel so, you know,
And
alone
it's
when
done
your
in a way
thoughts
where you
clash.
are comfortable, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't want to go and speak to a room full of people.
No, the online communication is so much easier for me because it's more like a game of chess. Somebody will
Yes.
say one thing, and if I'm not ready to respond for 3 weeks, then at least I'm responding when I can respond. No one's
Yeah, it's
expecting me to say it there and then.
it's so perfect and it's just so needed for so many people who are on the spectrum. The internet's just where it's at. And like how this idea of you could spend time with people and build relationships with them in a manner that makes sense for you, whether that just be maybe just through typing, chats on Discord, or there's so many ways where people who maybe wanted to have different relationships in their life who couldn't because of the internet, now they can have that. And I'm just so grateful. The isolation is very good for me, but it was also really keeping me from a lot of things that I didn't know I was missing.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It is, and the joy is if you're done with a conversation online in a way, you can turn a computer off. You can click it off. If there's somebody in front of you, trying to get out of that is sometimes impossible when they seem to be having a great time, but you've just spent the absolute last of your coins. You need to go home and recover and recoup. And online is great for that because it's more at the pace that you operate at. For
And
me
not to
especially.
say it's not still difficult. Like
No.
I also still struggle to navigate the social network of the internet as well. It's just an easier way for me to do it. So it is still hard for me. And there's still times where I'm like, what does this mean? Did I say this right? Like, it's not perfect, but it
Mm.
makes it accessible.
It does. It's another thing to look at. You don't have to just rely on face to face anymore. If I was talking to somebody about shopping, going to the shop and picking things up. And I said, well, the joy is we can order now because of the internet. We can just have things delivered now. We don't have to put ourselves out there when we're not feeling up to it and we're not ready for it. And and there are still problems. I rejoined X, and after a couple of months, I had to come off it again because it wasn't good for me to see everything that you can see on that. And
Mm-hmm.
it then affected other, it sort of trickled into other avenues of my life, and I didn't feel as positive. And it was like, forget this. I can't do that. That's one I can't do. I don't do Facebook or Meta, whatever it's called, because I don't want to be that readily available for people.
Mm-hmm.
I can only be available when I'm available. I just never know when that's going to be because I don't know how I'm going to feel with things that affect me.
I think this is a good way for us to transition to the close of our conversation, and that is to remind people that the best way to move forward after an autism diagnosis is to start to find the things that work best for you
Yes.
and not to feel guilty that maybe they're not the best for other people, but
Yeah.
to feel comfort in the fact that you can still have a nice life and get your groceries delivered if you need to.
Yeah. Love my deliveries. It's
So,
just I have to get them to the door. And one thing I struggle with is we have to open the door. There isn't a button to say knock on the door and leave them, which did
mhm.
exist when COVID was around. So I'm gutted that's gone. Need that button back.
We need to get one of those robots or whatever. Just
I'll
hello,
just I'll just get the dog to really bark. So it's like, sorry, he's angry. Just thanks for these. I'll put them
bye.
away. Yeah, avoid the small talk with the drivers.
Oh, yeah, I want to thank you for coming onto the show. One of the things I ask everyone before they leave is if you had a very short message to someone, one of the things I ask everyone before they leave is If you had a very short message to someone who is in the autism community or maybe are still exploring if they might be a part of it, um, do you have like just a short message that you would say to someone in that going through that?
Autism is not a bad thing. It's not negative. It is not less than. Everybody who is autistic has something to give, and you just have to find what it is. And when you find it, tap into it, allow yourself to be overindulgent in it. If you enjoy it, fill your boots with it, do everything you can with it. Don't let the rest of the world dictate how you live.
Wow. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm so glad that you agreed to come onto the show. One of the things I ask everyone before they leave is if you had a very short message to someone who is in the autism community or maybe are still exploring if they might be a part of it, do you have like just a short message that you would say to someone in that going through that?
Autism is not a bad thing. It's not negative. It is not less than. Everybody who is autistic has something to give, and you just have to find what it is. And when you find it, tap into it, allow yourself to be overindulgent in it. If you enjoy it, fill your boots with it, do everything you can with it. Don't let the rest of the world dictate how you live.
I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm so glad that you agreed to come onto the show. I encourage everyone, if you're looking for um, a different perspective or a new perspective, or maybe it'll be an old perspective too, but to check out Paul's channel. I hope everyone has a great day, and thank you again, and we'll see you all soon. Bye, guys.